Now that we've gotten through the characters that have been featured on the show so far, we're going to take some time to see how Thomas the Tank Engine is doing at his new branch line. Knowing that he's the sole engine to be in charge of it, this makes him feel honored to be given that kind of opportunity. We also get some info about his coaches Annie and Clarabelle.
Annie can only take passengers, but Clarabelle can take passengers, luggage, and the guard. They are both old and need new paint, but Thomas loves them very much.
A short train, but iconic nonetheless. The second image that pops into mind when Thomas is mentioned are his two brown coaches. To retain their interests, Thomas sings songs with Annie and Clarabelle. Sometimes it may sound like Thomas is in a rush, but he's only doing it to enjoy his schedule. One day, Thomas arrived at his station and was waiting for Henry's train, who was already late.
How can I run my line properly if Henry is always late? He doesn't realize that the Fat Controller depends on me. Thomas whistled impatiently.
Come on, Thomas, knock it off. Things do have to be on time when it comes to trains, but you are not the only engine, and you certainly don't pull a lot of important people. At last, Henry came around, but very meagerly. Remember what I said about Henry's problems? Now we are beginning to see this start to affect him. Pitying himself, Henry complains about his troubles.
Oh dear, my system is out of order. No one understands my case. You don't know what I suffer, moaned Henry. Rubbish, said Thomas. You're too fat. You need exercise.
Whoa, uncalled for. Look who's talking, Mr. Short and Stumpy Boiler. If anything, you're the squattier one. This is a new transition. All of a sudden, Thomas went from eager McBeaver to bossy McBoiler. As he finished blasting Henry, the guard blew his whistle and Thomas launched forward, forgetting him entirely. You see, this is when rearview mirrors would come in handy. Or the guard could have just blown his whistle again. Anyway, Thomas continued moving along his line, but Annie and Clarabelle didn't want to follow. They wanted to stop, but only their guard could engage the brake.
I've lost my nice guard. I've lost my nice guard, she sobbed. Annie tried to tell Thomas what had happened. We haven't a guard. We haven't a guard. But he was hurrying and wouldn't listen.
Further a ways out, Thomas came to a signal and stopped. Annoyed with having to stop, Thomas got crosser. Not understanding why he had to halt his train, everyone waited for the guard. But he never showed up, for obvious reasons. Annie and Clarabelle finally reached through to Thomas, telling him he wasn't there. And sure enough, the guard came running down the line to catch up and explain what had happened. So either Thomas didn't travel that far down his line, or this guard is a superhuman. Because running from a station to a train somewhere else is a long haul. I would have just took the day off. Once the guard was back on board, Annie and Clarabelle gave him the A-OK to chuff as fast as he wanted to.
They reached the end of the line quicker than ever before.
And we end at Farquhar Station, a place all too familiar when it comes to the original intro credits to the show. This wasn't a strong episode, but not a mediocre one either. What makes it slightly unappealing is the remark Thomas makes to Henry. I'm not saying Henry is a golden boy either, but there needs to be some level of respect. Thomas doesn't even bother to ask what's wrong with Henry. How can you judge what an individual is going through if you don't even try to understand? However, I do appreciate the fact that this little portion foreshadows what is coming down the pipe for Henry. In the end, Thomas's arrogance ends up proving that even he needs to be mindful of his actions too. But this is also the plus side to the episode. Up until this point, any Rolling Stock characters have had minor roles. They all played parts in other characters' stories, but never had a story fall on them almost completely. The fact that we get to see Annie and Clarabelle go through a set of emotions all by themselves is cute. As mentioned before, they may be old, but are dear friends of Thomas no matter what. They do have sweet-looking faces. I still can't get over the guard running down the rails, though. I guess that drink he had must have been a glass of milk? I don't know who would have had cold milk on them. Putting that aside, the rest of the production works like it should. We clearly get to hear Thomas's anthem theme once again several times throughout. The scenery added a bunch to the library. Thomas went under and over at least 3 different bridges, and we also see the iconic windmill for once other than the intro credits. Speaking of bridges, we will see what happens in the next episode in Thomas Goes Fishing. Thanks for watching.